Hi, my name's Todd Mosetter. I'm a vice president and executive coach here at Building Champions. I want to say thank you for joining us for the latest installment on our coach interview series. Today, I am excited to sit down with one of our CEO mentors, Brett Barriage. He brings a long, distinguished career before Building Champions, but he was also a client for many years. So he knows us well, lives what we do, and now has the opportunity to help others do it. Brett, thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Brett, one of the things that we feel really sets us apart is the real world experience of so many of our coaches. Not only are you gifted coaches, but you've sat in the seats. You've made the tough decisions, you've done amazing things, and you've lived through challenging seasons. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey before you came to Building Champions?
Yeah, happy to, Todd. And I was thinking as I was kind of just running through the years that it'd be really amazing if you could survey people and figure out, did your journey go the way you thought it would? Because mine sure didn't. I would never have foreseen where I am today back in college. And I think there's so much pressure on kids in college to figure out where they're going. But I think it would be an interesting exercise. Fresh out of college, I went and worked in a maximum security prison for a few years, and man, I learned a lot. You learn a lot about how to survive and get along and maintain peace as best you can. So interesting experience. From there, I moved into some work with young offenders and had some opportunity in that to do a lot of different leadership roles. Really fortunate that some opportunities came along to try different things. I was exposed to some really bad leadership, but I was also exposed to some really good leadership. One gentleman in particular became a bit of a mentor for me back when I was, in my late 20s, in my first kind of young leadership roles. And it was a Christian organization. We were funded by the government, but worked with kids and families. And it was when I think back about that, it was a really fruitful time for, about 15, 18 years of my life to really spend time in that organization. But in all of that, I just grew so much as a leader. I learned so much through trial and error, through mistakes and through good things. As part of that, I had some opportunity to do some consulting, did some stuff for the government, and then had an opportunity to join an organization called Leadership Management International. I think they're still around, but had a small little consulting business with them kind of as your backing. And one of my clients, my actually very first client, was a John Deere dealership up this area, multi-store John Deere dealership. And then I circled back with them and did some more work. And in that second time around, we actually had a discussion about maybe me becoming their general manager and a shareholder. And so unbeknownst to me, here I am all of a sudden with the opportunity to be a GM of a John Deere dealership, no farm background. My wife grew up on a farm, so that was interesting. Jumped at that opportunity. That was about 15 years ago. Through that, we had some growth. We did a merger. So then we grew to a certain size and became the CEO and president of the board, and was still a shareholder, obviously. And just learned so much in those 15 years, leading a board, leading the executive team, and just installing good processes and culture, and making sure that we were operating in a way that was effective as an organization. And again, really my focus was on our team and on the people. Certainly, again, learn through mistakes and learn through things that we did well as well. So that's kind of my journey real quick. Opportunity came along. We're looking at succession on our shareholder side. And my wife and I have been married 33 years, have been doing leadership for a long time in an organization. So opportunity came along just to slow down a little bit and take a different path in life. And just really blessed that I could do that, kind of semi-retire, retire. And then, of course, hook up with Building Champions, as you said earlier. Been a client for quite a while and been doing that for about a year now, and just love what I'm doing, working with clients. And so that's a real quick nutshell of my journey, Todd. I don't know if there's anything else you want to dive in there, but
great overview, and thank you for giving us a little more insight. Especially, I always love that early part of your background that you literally went to jail out of college. Out of context, that can be interesting. Leadership is always rewarding, but it's never easy, right? There's always those challenging times. And it's funny because the challenging times are usually the ones where we can learn the most about ourselves and others. Thinking back of your time, especially at Premier Equipment, what do you think one of the hardest things you ever had to do as CEO was?
Oh, that's a good question. I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. They're both very different. One would be just working through it. None of us had been through a merger before. And so we merged two 5-store dealerships together. And I think we just thought, we'll figure it out. And we did figure it out, but there were lots of things that we just weren't aware of as we dove into that whole process. And both had very different cultures. Neither was right or wrong, but they were very different. And bringing those two cultures together took a great deal of effort, focus, accountability, to the point where, we had to let some people go because it just wasn't a fit in terms of what the new culture needed to be, and putting stakes in the ground on that. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I think about, was just bringing those two organizations together and establishing that culture. I think, and then just some of the one-on-one decisions, we were very clear about who we are as an organization in terms of our expectations around code of conduct, our convictions with behaviors, who we were going to be. And it started with me, and I was accountable for how I carried those out. And if I didn't carry them out, my job wouldn't be secure. And so, fortunately, on the way, I had to make some tough decisions, and those were really tough. But letting people go that just didn't fit what we were after, and you really feel bad about those because you're impacting people, their lives, their families. But we were clear about our expectations, and so we had to make some tough decisions along the way. And I don't regret any of them, but certainly they were tough to do at the time.
It's not a surprise to me that you've transitioned to a role now, as a CEO mentor with us, being able to share your wisdom and insight with clients, because over your career, you had the heart of a coach. You mentioned it, that your investment in your people, the priority on their development and their culture, was so key to your success. Can you tell us a little bit kind of more about your heart and philosophy of why you prioritized people so much in your role?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's an organization called Delcrest Children's Center. It was in London, Ontario, and I can think of the gentleman. I can picture him today. He had this whole model around coaching, monthly coaching. This is probably, I first probably saw this 30 years ago, and it was really simple. Was this whole idea of sitting down with the people that you're responsible for, and I think about it that way. It's not about how many direct reports I have. It's about, I'm responsible for 10 people. I'd rather be responsible for 3 people, not 10 people. So that's my role, is to be responsible for how they're doing. But sitting down with them on a regular basis, and I did it monthly, maybe need to do it more, but just really having a heart about how they're doing personally, how they're doing kind of work-wise, what do they need from me, what do we need to figure out together, and just giving them that time as their leader. That was one of the most important disciplines I did. That discipline arose out of kind of how I felt about my role, and that was that I was relational in terms of how I lead. I think it's the Henry Cloud thing. Leadership is about influence. It doesn't happen without connection. And so I was about connecting with people, leading, having clear expectations, but providing support and accountability around that. And so the disciplines I did were really out of that heart of how I wanted to interact with those that I was responsible for.
I love that philosophy, because leadership really is opportunity and responsibility, and seeing it that way is so key. You talked a little bit about your style when you were CEO and the way you invested in people. If someone has a chance to work with you as a CEO mentor, all of our mentors and coaches, they all have a different style in terms of the way that they really connect, communicate, and support people. Brett, how do you think you would describe your style if someone had a chance to work with you?
I would say very relational. The fit has to be right. And I think that's paramount. It's not about hiring a coach. It's not about, selling a client something. And I think this is something Building Champions does really well. It's about the right fit. It's about the fit in terms of personality, about how we interact, about how we see things, about values, and just how we go about our daily jobs. So to me, that relational part is probably the paramount one for me. I also like that whole idea of a trusted advisor. I know it's not really Building Champions, but I really see myself that way. I'm humbled. I told a client just this last week, because they completed the survey, and they have some nice things to say, but I'm so humbled that you pay me to come alongside you and offer you thoughts and ask questions. And I don't think that I've earned that, but I guess the experience I've gone through helps others leaders. And so I really get humbled by that. I love it. I enjoy it. Days that I get to do it is just are awesome for me. I think also I'm available. I know we have regular meetings, and those are all great and they're scheduled, but I mean, short of 24/7, I'm pretty much available for my clients whenever they need something. We hop on calls all the time outside of regular meetings, and I just love that. I love interacting, helping them solve problems, asking them good questions, and so that's kind of really just a bit of a overview of my style in terms of my CEO mentoring and coaching.
I know with your experience, as well as just your ability to really effectively coach other people, you can help in a lot of areas. Are there one or two that come to mind that if a person is really struggling with, this or that, it's an area that you feel like you can add immense value?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest areas for me is around leadership of your team, interacting with your team. How am I setting expectations, providing coaching, holding them accountable? So that if you're an executive and you have a leadership team, how are you leading them? Are you leading them effectively? Are you leading yourself well to lead them effectively? That whole interaction with your senior team, I think that's an area that I can offer some assistance in. I think even with boards, we established a whole board process and structure and policy manual around how boards should function. That whole shareholder hat versus employee hat, and how do you separate those two? Did a lot of work on just structure that way with the board and the exec team and how those separate. And then even succession. We went through a lot of succession planning with the ownership side of the business. To great detail where we again learned some things, some mistakes we made, but learned some things we did well. I think that whole area of succession is something that, again, just through experience, I can offer some assistance to people as well.
I think that's one of the great advantages of working with whether you or any of our CEO mentors is that experience. You've learned so much, often through mistakes that you made, but that's the benefit of others because they can learn both from your successes and where you may have struggled a bit.
Yeah.
At Building Champions, we all strive to be lifelong learners, right? We never feel like we've arrived. We're always looking to better ourselves. You can't give away what you don't possess. Brett, fill us in a little bit. What are you currently excited or learning about right now for you?
I would say there's two things. I think the first one is it comes from, again, Henry Cloud. I keep mentioning Henry Cloud, but props to him. In the book there's material from the book called Boundaries for Leaders. This whole concept of, and I think if you think about this past year, especially for me, I think for all of us, it's been bizarre. And so enough words, right? We've used all the adjectives we can use to describe this past year. But for me, this reviewing and trying to stay focused on what do I have full control over? What do I have zero control over? What do I have influence over? And really understanding that and staying focused in those lanes, instead of looking at the things that are being held back or restricted. This past year has been a lot that's been taken away from us, privileges that we're used to. And so for myself, it's been a daily kind of grind to not get too wound up about that stuff or struggle with that stuff. And so really focusing on that control, what level of influence I have, and then really letting that sink in to say, okay, well, really, Brett, let's focus on what you can control and be there for your clients and your family and whatnot. So that's the one thing. The other book I'm reading, actually more on a personal kind of spiritual side, is it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. It's actually an author from Portland, I think, out there at a church in Portland or in Oregon somewhere. But it's really just about this whole idea that, and it goes into a whole detail about this whirlwind that we live in now. And I call it the drive-through mentality. We have this, if you can't get it in 10 minutes, then don't waste my time, right? We expect things now, and there's just so much information coming at us. That's not bad, but what do I do with all that? The social media, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Facebook, internet, email, all those things. And how am I taking time for myself to make sure I'm not just constantly in the whirlwind? And so this idea of this elimination of hurry talks about some ways to slow down and really make sure that you're taking care of yourself well, so that it's just not about the race every day. So I'm just enjoying that book in terms of a challenge and way I've thought about things before.
Yeah, would love to connect with you sometime on what you're taking away from that as we think about the opportunity in our current age with so much information. The ability to focus is going to be a key skill that'll keep us competitive as leaders because we're not for a lack of distractions anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing that we always say at Building Champions and believe at a heart level is that better humans make better leaders. You can't separate the personal and professional. You never could, but you especially can't anymore. Who we are at home influences who we are at work. So, Brett, if there were one or two things that folks would need to know about you as a person to better understand you, what would you want to share?
Yeah, I think my faith is very important to me. It's a priority for me. My wife and I have been married for 33 years. And so family, we have 2 kids, married. Our first grandson, Bo, is here now. He's just a joy to be around. So family, we're always with family. They're over all the time, and we just love that. I think I stay really active. I'm into sports. I'm into physical fitness and watching what I eat. I'm not perfect by any stretch. No one is. But I think those things are priorities for me. And I just think also work-life balance was always a priority for me. I think that's important for leaders to have that balance and know your priorities. And that life planning process that we do at Building Champions is so powerful to help people sort through their priorities and then are you making decisions that reflect your priorities? So I think that gives you an answer, kind of, Todd, to what you're looking for.
It's a great answer. The one thing that I always think about that I think is amazing, so many things amazing about you, but at your age, you aren't afraid to still lace up the skates, are you?
No, we get to play some ice hockey a couple of times a week up here, and I quite enjoy that. We're waiting for golf season to open. It should be open, but with restrictions, we're a little delayed right now. But yeah, my two passions would be hockey still and golf in the summer. But I do some snowmobiling, do some snowboarding, some other fun things as well. So yeah, hockey's still very much part of our life up here. That's for sure.
Well, Brett, it's so great to have you on the team. I've known you as a client before you joined us, and now I'm honored and privileged to call you a teammate. Thanks for taking time to sit down with us today.
My pleasure, Todd. Thanks for having me.
If you're interested in working with Brett, any of our CEO mentors or coaches, please just head over to buildingchampions.com. You can click on the About Us page there, and you'll get bios and pictures for all of our coaches. One of the things we love at Building Champions is we are large enough that, like Brett said, we can match you with the right client, whether it's Brett or any of our coaches. We can make sure you get the right fit. Thanks for taking time out. Really appreciate it. And until next time, thanks so much.